You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning with Charlie Nusser, who's the owner of Hands Jewelers. Charlie, how's it going?
Things are going well, Gary. You know,
Good.
Just being in a room with you is always a delight.
It's always fun, isn't it?
We always have a good time.
So tell us how you started. Tell us a little bit about Hands, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued by, and tell us about your lovely wife.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
should be the first thing you talk
Yes,
about.
absolutely.
But, tell us whatever you want to talk about and talk about how you got started and what you did and then how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me as well.
You bet.
It's I'm a Iowa City kid, born and raised.
West Side Trojan.
West Side Trojan.
Yeah.
I'd say more importantly, a Lincoln Lion. So I went to Lincoln Elementary School. And
Can you sing the West Side Fight song? By the way?
You know, I can sing the one that's not appropriate for the radio show.
No, don't do that.
That my wife doesn't like because my wife happened to go to City High. So it's
All right. You're divided.
If I don't want my laundry done, I just sing that song. You know. No. So I've been born and raised in Iowa City, and fortunate enough that our family's had a jewelry store for a number of years. Where our jewelry store's coming up on our 170th year anniversary. So
Wow.
been here in Iowa City the whole time. Which
You're
is
old. You're not as old as you look.
I
For
work
170
out
years.
quite a bit. I mean, you got to know it. So
170. Who started it then?
So it was actually originally started. It wasn't originally started by our family. So it was actually started by Oliver Startzman originally, and so it's been in our family for about 150 of those years. So
Wow.
it's been really, really amazing. And so we've been at our current location, our newest location, for about 140 years. So it's
At that 140 years in that location.
yeah, and that location itself actually has been a jewelry store for over 170 years. So
I never knew that.
yeah, so it's really, really neat, and it's a great store. You go in there, our cases, our woodwork are 107 years old this year, and so it's really neat to kind of see that, and I got to spend a lot of time with the cases polishing the wood when I was growing up.
Really?
That was one of the things, and that was actually kind of how I got involved in the store. I always thought, hey, I kind of want to be like Dad. Dad's a good guy, seems really neat. I kind of want to be like him, and so I said, hey, Dad, I'd love to work at the store. And he chuckled and said, all right, we'll come in tomorrow. And so I said, okay, perfect.
How
Thinking,
old were you?
whatever legal age it is to work in Iowa is about
Okay.
the, yeah. So
10?
Yeah.
You were 10.
Pretty much. And, thinking I'd probably walk in there and, I'd be CEO the next week or something like that. And so the first thing they do is I had an interview with the store manager at the time. And so I had to apply for the job. My dad had a rule that we had to start as janitor. And so
Oh, really?
I thought, all right, well,
cool.
that's fine. And so I'll nail this interview. And so went into the interview, and I did not get the job the first time, which was quite the shock. And I remember going home, and that was a very awkward dinner at home. Hey, Dad, why? And but it's something that I really appreciate now. It was something that I think my dad was trying to instill in us, that nothing's given. Just because you have a last name or you were born into something doesn't mean that you deserve anything else that somebody else doesn't have. And that you need to make that opportunity.
Why didn't you get it? Were you too nervous or?
I just think I wasn't even ready or prepared, and I don't think I really thought too much about it. I just kind of thought, I'm going to the store.
I'm a Nusser. I can just walk in.
Yeah, exactly. And that was quickly, that attitude was quickly taken out of me, which I'm so grateful for. And it's something that really was something that at the time didn't really love the fact I didn't get the job, but now I certainly appreciate that and kind of see why he did that with us. But working as a janitor was such a great experience because it really allowed us to literally work from the bottom and work our way up. And it takes time, as you know. And
What'd you do between the time they didn't hire you as a janitor? Did you
yeah,
bale hay,
so what we actually, bale hay. Yeah, I'd work on an organic farm, Friendly Farms in Iowa City. David Braverman's worked for his father. Just he'd pick us up, and he was the greatest guy in the world. Bob was just an amazing man, and so did that. And then the next summer, got the job as the janitor, and that was the greatest. It was so much fun. There was always a college person who was also there, and so I would just kind of follow them, and it was just a blast doing that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And so that was kind of how I first got involved in the store, and then slowly kind of just worked my way up, and decided I wanted to do sales at one point. And it was interesting because when I started in sales, I found out I knew nothing about jewelry. I didn't know a single thing. And so, I
were you intimidated by sales?
I was.
A lot of people are. A lot of
Yeah.
people are afraid to talk to people, ask for the order.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that?
It's a great question. And I was extremely intimidated by it. And I also, my father never really taught us a lot about the store because he wanted us to make our own way if we wanted to. So if we wanted to come to the store, great, but he didn't want to force us into it. And so I knew as much about, jewelry as pull any guy off the college guy off the street. That's what I knew. And so I was extremely intimidated. And the way I overcame it was by asking questions like no other and just researching and asking questions. And it immediately became clear to me that I was going to need to work my tail off to make sure that I knew what I was talking about and that, I would be able to have resources I could go to if I didn't know what I was talking about.
Let's take, how do you know what you're talking about? So you go in a jewelry store, there's necklaces, there's diamonds, there's rings, there's all that stuff. How would you know? Did you look under the microscope to know what kind of diamonds are cut and how you cut it? And,
so
that's a lot of knowledge that people wouldn't even realize because most people, you just walk in, you stare at the case. I like that one.
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
they can't afford it or could or whatever you point at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what I did is really relied on our we have a great long-term employees, and so really relied on that. But we actually pay for the education of our employees through the Gemological Institute of America.
Where's that at?
It's in Carlsbad, California, and so you can do long-distance education through them. And so when I was in high school, I started studying and doing my gemological courses, and so that was where I kind of got the basis of knowledge on the products and stuff like that. But I still didn't know how to sell. I started to know a little bit about what it was, but I still didn't know how to sell. And, the selling part really came from watching other people and kind of taking some of what they were doing and mixing it with some of what I was doing and just kind of trying it on, seeing how it fit for me. And I think I ultimately really came to the conclusion, and I'm certainly not the first person who ever came up with this idea, but something that I really like to instill in our staff as well is that if you feel like you're selling, you're doing your job wrong. You shouldn't feel like you're selling. Ultimately, we are there to help people find what it is that they're looking for. It's not about what I want to sell them. Right. It's all about educating them and giving them the best experience so they can make the right choice, Well,
part of selling, don't you think, is asking questions?
100%.
So if people come in, they don't know what, they're just looking. Well, everybody's looking.
Yeah, yep.
Well, we're getting married. Well, that kind of keys you up in an engagement ring or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but a lot of people, it reminds me of a story. I shouldn't keep talking about stories.
Oh, no, I want to hear this. I love Gary Watt's
stories. I have a
stories.
lot of stories.
Let's hear them.
It was a friend of mine that was in a certain business that was in the feed business, and he was in a trade show in Chicago. And he's walking by a booth, and a guy was trying to sell him this and this and this and this, and it had nothing to do with the feed business. Finally looked at him, and the guy kept talking. He finally looked at him point blank, says, "What business am I in?" And he goes, "Should I guess I didn't ask." He goes, "Why would I need this product?" It didn't matter what it was. Yeah. You haven't even asked me what I do. And I always stuck with me in sales. Hadn't even spent the time to know, well, in the feed business, that's not going to work.
Absolutely.
I don't know, remember what the product was, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But his point was you didn't even take the first initial 30 seconds, say, "Oh, I'm so-and-so.
Absolutely.
And I'm in this business. Would that help your business?" So it's a matter of asking questions, isn't it? That's my point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's such a important part of it, and that's how you get that information that you can use to help them find what it is that they're looking for.
Right.
And so that was really hard. I mean, that's something that we do sales courses at Hands for our staff. My dad is an amazing sales teacher, and one of the things we talk a lot about is asking questions and asking the right questions. Right. And so that was really key to being able to kind of get going.
Right.
And so kind of once I started to kind of put those things together, things started kind of rolling in my favor. But it was a lot of work at first and still is a lot of work. But, I was just so fortunate that I had such great people around me.
Who was around you besides your dad?
Yeah, so I have my dad obviously, but I would say our employees. We have such amazing employees, and I always joke that Hands Jewelers probably wouldn't still be here if it was just the Nusser family. It's really all the people who've worked at Hands Jewelers over the year that make it so that Hands Jewelers is still here and is what it is. And so I felt really fortunate. I mean, there are people who still work there who've known me since I was a baby, and so they really took me underneath their wing and helped me a great deal. And I was just so appreciative of that.
How do you? I read a note you had that the average length of employment is 22.5 years.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Tell me a little bit about leadership.
Sure.
Talk to me about employee retention. Because to me, if you have that continuity, it's like Warren Buffett. Hopefully you know who Warren Buffett is. But
Yep.
in his team, I don't think his team's changed for I don't know, 40, 50, a long
Yeah.
time. And him and Charlie Munger been together for a long period of time.
Long time, yeah.
And that just stays constant. So
Yeah.
it sounds to me like when I look at Hands and the folks that work with your group, it's amazing. 22 and a half years is amazing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, first and foremost, I can take very little credit for it, but I think that my grandfather and my father really emphasized that if we were going to take care of our customers, we needed to take care of our staff. And that was really something that they really felt strongly about. I mean, Linda, our gemologist, was hired by my grandfather. And then there's Marcia and Dan and so many people who've been working there for 20, 30 years. And so I think what really the key is being honest with people. There's good times and there's bad times, and being honest with it throughout that, but taking care of people most importantly, and making sure that they're felt like they're being taken care of. You can think that you're doing something for somebody and, they should be so grateful, but that might not be what their need is. I mean, it almost goes back to asking questions, where it's like you need to be, checking in with your staff. Where are they at, in their work life, but also what's happening in their personal life. I'm not saying you need to dive in too deep, but you should be aware, if they have some things that they're working that, maybe struggling with, is there something we can do to help? Can we, do they need a little bit of time off? What can we do to make it so that they feel that like they're being taken care of? I think is such a really important thing. And I think that's what's really gotten us to be able to have such long-term employees, especially in a college town, because normally in a college town, you're just going to have turnover left and right. And so, I think that really treating these employees like family has been really crucial for us. And they really are family. I mean, like I said, these are people who knew me when I was a baby, so it's really, really neat.
I think I told you my story. Did I tell you about my first ring? I bought Becky.
Oh, please tell that story. I love that story.
Yeah, hopefully I could still remember. I'm getting older and things are slipping. But it was something, the fact that this was back, I'm trying to think of the year. It was a long time ago, 75 or something.
Yeah.
And I think I was in the Merle Hay Mall, and I went in and looking at, of course, I just walk in, and the salesperson came over eventually because she probably looked at me and goes, "This kid, what's he doing in it?" Which I would agree. I wouldn't even, if I saw me, and I wouldn't talk to me either back then. So anyway, so I'm looking at the glass display case, and it's something like, and Becky and I were kind of looking at it, and I go, "Well, what's this? How much is this?" And I really like this. Can I see that? And she looked at me. She goes, "Well, just started with how much can you spend, or what do you want to spend?" Because I'm sure she looked at me like some college kid that didn't, which I was. I don't know what I was. I said like $350 is kind of my limit or whatever. She goes, "So let me get back more in your range. Let's go over to this case." And I kind of thought, I'm not real good at sales yet, but that's kind of like, kind of took the air out of the excitement of
completely
an engagement ring and, excited to get married. And I'm trying to impress my wife. And she's like,
100%.
"Man, that's like a beer can top at $350, those little rings." But that's how it started. And I always remember that. I think I've told you that story. It's like, I wouldn't really say, "Let me get more in your range." So, and basically, from that, how do you talk about price range and what folks want to spend? Because it is a big investment for a lot of kids.
You're absolutely right, and that's such a great point. Is that bringing price into it is ultimately it's something that we really feel like, and we tell our customers is before we start talking about price, let's first figure out what it is that's perfect for you. Right? Let's find out something that's perfect for you, so we can figure out what's important to you. And it kind of goes once again, not to keep reiterating, but goes back to those questions, is asking those questions, because I really believe that before we let the price get in the way, let's first figure out what's our goal that we want to get to, and then we can kind of work backwards with the price on that aspect of it. And
what do you hear if it's a perfect day? We're getting married, and I want my wife to be excited, or what do you hear when you ask that, when you try to have that perfect?
Yeah. So when usually people have a pretty good idea. Sometimes people don't have any idea at all, which is great, because then it gives us the opportunity to educate them. And one of the first things we tell people when they walk in our stores, our goal is to educate you. If you buy something here, great. But if you walk out of the door and you know more than you did than when you walked in, then we feel like we've done our job. And I truly believe that, because ultimately, just because you don't buy from us today, if you leave with a good experience, well, you have an anniversary every year. So you're probably going to give me another shot, hopefully, Right. And so, a lot of times what we hear is, I'm thinking, I really want something like, this, and they may describe a certain type of ring. And more oftentimes than not, what they describe, it turns out to be not what they want. you know, and
right.
which is, but you can't say that right off the bat. And sometimes you don't know right off the bat, but it's important to show them that. And so that they're making the decision. I'm not making that decision for them. And so, and then we just kind of work with them and talk about, what do you do for a living, for example? So, and I'm asking that question because I want to know what the wear patterns are going to be for the ring, for example, if it's an engagement ring. And so we really try and get to know them as much as possible so that we can really help them make that best decision any way we can.
Do you get into the point where you educate them on, you look under a microscope, you kind of see who's cut what, if it's blue, I don't get that.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that. And then also maybe the investment side to where, of course, back when I did that, I did eventually trade that in on something else. Yeah. you could barely see the diamond. It depends on where the sun's at a certain time. You can see the.
Yeah, my grandpa would call them canardly diamonds because you can hardly see them.
But talk about looking in a microscope and trying to, because it is a big investment for most. You're just starting out.
Yeah.
And I would think most guys want to impress their wives with a nice diamond.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a nice band and what that means. And
absolutely.
And especially with engagement, how do you match that to the diamond of going into marriage and whatever?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us more about the investment, then also looking under the scope.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we're looking at engagement rings, for example, first kind of start with them and like we just talked about, looking at the rings, kind of finding styles that we like. We'll narrow it down to, 2 or 3. And then we start talking about the stones. And that's kind of the fun part, at least what I like to think is the fun part. And so we have a very small room. It's about half the size of this room. And we go in there and we have a microscope that's from the 1960s that works better than anything you could buy today.
Really?
And it's just this great magical room where people can feel comfortable and can feel like the attention is on them and that they're being heard as well. And so what we do is we just kind of start talking to them about how we recommend buying a diamond. And so, for example, for us, for as long as we've been in business, we've always really believed when it comes to diamonds in the cut of the stone and having a stone that is cut superior to anything else. Some people prefer size, some people prefer color or clarity. If you do cut right, you're going to be able to, play with a lot of other things. And so we kind of walk them through what we call the 4 C's. And so the 4 C's is a general way that you could kind of, go about buying a diamond. The first being cut. And when we talk about cut, we're not talking about the shape of the stone, but rather how those facets are aligned. How that light's coming into that stone and coming back out.
Is that called refraction?
You got it.
Can you believe it?
What? Gosh,
I think I remember that in chemistry in 8th grade or something. Maybe it wasn't chemistry.
Can you not open a jewelry store? I don't want to have to compete with you. You'll take me over. But that's exactly what it is. And then we talk to them about, the color of the stone, and what color is. And so a lot of people don't realize that diamonds can have color in them. And it's just what was in the ground while it was coming up. For example, a lot of times it's just nitrogen that was in the ground. And that can make diamonds look more white or more yellow, depending on that. And then, of course, the clarity. Flaws. Are there flaws in it? Do they matter? Are they going to affect different things? And so we kind of just walk them through all these and talk about, what to kind of pay attention to when you're evaluating a stone. And we do this with the intention that they'll be able to use this tool not only in our store, that they'll be able to use the tool that we're giving them no matter where they go and buy. And so and we really feel like that's important as well, because then no matter what, they're going to end up with something that they want. And so it's a lot of fun doing that. And then we'll show them different stones so that we can show them what different cuts look like and different colors look like and different clarity. And it's always fun looking on the microscope at the different clarity, the different inclusions. And so that's a lot of fun. And it's neat for the customer because they're learning and about something that's exciting to them. And so it's really neat. And my favorite thing is after we kind of finish up and they oftentimes will say, wow, I feel like I know so much from this. And to me, like, that's the best. I'd love to sell them something, but if they just say that, I'm happy with that.
From an investment perspective, do they hold their value? Talk about the diamond.
Yeah, that's certainly a tricky question in the sense of certain stones can hold their value. A famous line from my father, which I do agree with, is that if you're going to invest in diamonds, you should probably first see your psychiatrist before you do that. Because ultimately diamonds are something that are going to increase and decrease. And if you're looking purely for an investment that's going to increase on paper, diamonds are a great way to go. If you're looking for an investment that will actually increase in terms of, a cash value, diamonds aren't necessarily always the best. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And so, in the diamond business, jewelers will oftentimes really try and push that investment aspect of it. And I think that there are things in the jewelry industry you certainly can invest in, but I think, most importantly, pushing the, finding what's right for that particular person, because you're in real estate, there's not much better investments than real estate, right? So, and there's certainly, like I said, I'm not saying that there's not good investments in jewelry. I just tend to steer away from investment in the sense of telling people the truth and not just saying, hey, it's every year on paper for insurance value, it's going to increase. Yes, that's going to happen. But in terms of like actual cash value, not necessarily. Some years it will, some years it won't.
Do you do estate sales? Somebody passes away. Do you get into that and have jewelry?
A little bit. We will. We're fortunate that we have. So Linda, our appraiser, and Marcia as well, who's our senior sales associate, they're extraordinarily knowledgeable about estate jewelry, and so we'll have people who will bring stuff to us for us to evaluate it and identify it, and from time to time we'll buy some of that stuff. We don't do a ton of estate buying just because we're a little bit limited in our space, but it's something that we always keep our eye out on, and we always try and really help estates while they're going through that process. It's a tough process. There's a lot of factors, generally multiple siblings involved, and how everything's going to be, divided. And so we try and once again take that educational approach of walking people through, this is how we would recommend going about this and how you should evaluate it. So not to get into the weeds about appraising, but you want to appraise jewelry for an estate at a different value than a retail value, because basically, you want to do a fair market value is what the law tells you for, tax purposes. So it's certainly an interesting part of the business.
I want to switch around a little bit here as my mind's skipping around it like it does.
I love it.
Your mother's father was Sandy Boyd, right?
Yep.
He just passed away. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, president of the University of Iowa, famous. Tell me what you learned about your grandparents.
Oh, gosh.
Especially Sandy. I don't want to, I know he just passed. But, I didn't know him, but from my perspective, being here for, 45 years in town, class act, gentleman, diehard Hawkeye, University of Iowa.
Yep.
So tell us about Sandy.
Yeah,
I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So, So for those who don't know, Sandy Boyd, he was president of the University of Iowa.
What years?
I believe it was 69 to, I want to say 81 or 79.
Okay.
And so, and that was during the Vietnam riots.
Some tough times.
Some very, very tough times. And he taught me a lot about that. I was very fortunate. So, to just kind of briefly segue, my grandfather, when he was done being president of the university, went to the Field Museum in Chicago and was president there. And then they ultimately came back to Iowa City, and they moved 3 houses down from us, which as a kid was the greatest thing in the world. So on my way to elementary school, stop, have breakfast with grandma and grandpa, and then I'd go to school, then stop and, see grandma and grandpa. And so I became, the grandkid where like my grandparents were totally my best friends. They were the greatest. And so they, and I loved asking them questions because I think it's such an important thing when, just like I like asking you questions, you've experienced a lot more life than I have. And so I can, pick your brain and say, hey, I'm going through this. What's your experience? And so, he teaches a lot. But one thing you talk a lot about was the Vietnam riots and how difficult of the time was. And he didn't say that in the sense of, complaining, oh, it was so hard, but more so just managing it and making sure that it turned out the way that, he really wanted it to turn out. And what I love that he did throughout that whole process was he made himself accessible. Okay. So I think one of the most amazing things he did was he had his door taken off his office. So anybody could come in.
Wow.
And the thought of doing that is terrible to me, but and so
I don't think they do it today.
No. And so not only did he do that, he actually didn't live in the president's house. He lived in the house that I actually grew up in as well. And he would host groups, of varying different views on what's happening every single night. And my grandma was a huge part of that too. And so, just listening to him talk about, the importance of maintaining an institution throughout this. There is a crisis, but the institution must maintain. And that was what's really, really something that was important. And so it ended up that they didn't close. They offered students the opportunity to take their grade as is, and they could finish it, or they can, keep going. And so it was one of the few schools that didn't completely shut down. And he felt like that was important. He felt like it was important that people had the opportunity to, get out of there if they didn't feel safe, of course, but that this was also a time where people can be brought together. And I feel like that's what he did, which was so brilliant, was he had this amazing ability to bring groups of different people together, genuinely listen to them, and then have them all work it out together. And that's, what was really neat about him. I mean, just being around him was just so amazing because he had the greatest stories in the world, but they were always just really stories about other people. And I always kind of, I just always, that always stuck out to me. You know, Grandpa, you never talk about yourself. You always talk about, you know, oh, I'll ask him, hey, Grandpa, how'd you do this? Well, actually, this person did this. You know, Phil Hubbard did this or this, that. And that really stuck with me. And it kind of made me realize, you know, okay, this is a person who was really smart and put really smart people around him. And that's something that, you know, I've certainly tried to do myself. And, you know, I'll say, you know, everyone who we hire is smarter than me. And that's the best part about it, you know. So it's just really amazing having him. And he and I were particularly close. I even took his class in college.
Was he a law professor?
Yeah, so he started off as a law professor, and so he did that for several years, and he was a young president. You know, he and it was quite controversial at the time because of how young he was.
What was he?
You know,
45?
I think he was younger than that, and I think he was. And so for the regents, I think Chuck Grassley actually voted against him. And Chuck Grassley one time, he was giving a speech and he had a great quote. He said they were voting for somebody for president, and Chuck Grassley stood up and said, you know, I voted no for Sandy Boyd. I don't think I should be even allowed to vote on this. And
he's being honest.
Yeah. And it was great. And but yeah, no, growing up with somebody like that is really amazing. But he would always bring us back down to earth, you know. And I thought that was really great. And he really stressed the importance of taking care of other people in our community as well, you know. And that's something that I really appreciate and trying to embrace myself as well.
Well, a lot of people don't. You know, I do remember. I wasn't here in Iowa City then, but it was a really difficult time for the country.
Yeah.
And you needed leaders like your grandfather.
Yeah.
To kind of calm it down because you could kind of see both sides and everybody was troubled. You know, obviously there were a lot of riots and there's a lot of things going on. Downtown Iowa City was kind of like a war zone actually.
Yep.
And I'm sure at the university he didn't know. I'm sure professors like, you know, go to school, you might get something thrown at you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure ROTC was under siege of what they were doing and just with the so it was a really, really difficult time for our country.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that there wasn't any more damage done in Iowa City. And we made it through it. And obviously Sandy was a big part of helping people adjust to that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was a super difficult time. And just one thing that stuck out to me when you mentioned that was they actually had somebody dress up as the Grim Reaper and who would walk back in front of the house for, I think it was 6 months straight. And so, you know, it's just amazing to me that he was able to take that attitude, you know, is that we're going to get stuff done no matter what, you know, and we're going to do it the right way too. And so, like you said, it was a difficult time. And I think we're fortunate he was a great leader.
Good. Well, sorry, I got skipped back, but
no.
I just definitely had to hit on Sandy Boyd. So let's get back to the jewelry store.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about diamonds. What is a diamond? Is it a lump of coal?
I
mean, you know, it ends up being a diamond. Tell me, get into the rock.
It's a great question. It's a great question. So a diamond is going to be 99.9% carbon. So it's carbon. So sometimes people will say, oh, you know, graphite, you know, pencil lead and diamond are the same thing. Well, they're not that far different. They're not the same thing, but they just went under different pressures in terms of, you know, being brought up to the earth. So graphite is also, you know, predominantly carbon. What it's missing is it missed that intense heat and pressure, you know, coming from up from the bottom of the earth. So basically a diamond starts in the core of the earth. And so from there—
How far down?
It's going to be miles and miles and miles down.
Really?
So
and it's hot.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily hot. I mean, we're talking at the very, very core, and so it's actually, you know, volcanoes which eventually bring them up. But as they're going, it's these carbon atoms, and there's so much heat and so much pressure that it's pushing these atoms together, and so it's creating what we call a lattice structure. And so basically, that's why diamonds are as hard as they are, because so much heat and so much pressure pushed all these different atoms together. And science folks, I'm probably not doing the best job explaining this, but I think this is pretty close to it. And that's what makes it so strong. And so as it's going through up from the, you know, the center of the earth, it's also it's growing. It's picking up different elements, different minerals inside of it, and that can sometimes be what the inclusions are. And so the journey is truly unbelievable, and the journey is hundreds of millions a year. I mean,
really?
It's really unbelievable to think about how the journey a diamond takes. And I think that's really representative of why people have used diamonds in engagement rings, is it represents the journey. it represents the good times and the hard times, the pressure that it takes, to form a diamond. I mean, the pressure it takes to find that one person in your life who you love and you'll spend the rest of your life with. I mean, it really represents that in so many different ways, and just the way it is physically. And it's amazing, that it's come out of the earth, and the earth has created that. All of the diamonds in earth that we'll have on earth, they've all been created. So there's not new ones being created. There's certainly ones we haven't found yet, but they're not, in our lifetime at least, they're not, going to find any new diamonds that were just recently created.
Are diamonds the hardest material on earth?
They are going to be the hardest, but they're not the toughest. So hardness is going to be a resistance to scratching and abrasions, and toughness is going to be a resistance to breaking. So, sometimes people think, oh, you can't break a diamond. Well, you can. It's going to be very, very hard. But, if all the things align, you could hit a diamond. You could break it.
Okay. That's an interesting. Yeah. And they're mostly in Africa?
There's Africa predominantly was where most of the diamonds are from. Namibia, for example, is an area right now that's very full with stones, and so Africa is obviously a large area of diamonds. Canada has quite a few diamonds.
Really?
Yeah, Australia has quite a few diamonds. Russia has a ton of diamonds, and those are stones that you don't see in the United States market for obvious reasons. But yeah, there's certainly a lot in Africa. And what I love about the diamond industry, I won't sit here and try and pretend like the diamond industry has always been great. It hasn't been. There's been terrible things, unfortunately, that has happened, over the years in the industry. And it's great to be a part of a group of people who we're trying to do what we can to make it as right as possible. And
what do you mean by what's happened?
Yeah,
the way they mine them and
the way that they went in and they basically took over areas and enslaved people to get stones. I mean, we're
working the mines.
Yeah, and we're talking about hundreds of years ago certainly, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We can't forget that happened, because the second we forget that happened, that's what can make it happen again. And so what's great is we're part of a group of jewelers, for example, who helped put together in Namibia women can actually start drive now. It's something that's relatively recent, and so there were jobs for them in the mines driving trucks, but no one knew how to drive. And so we're part of a number of jewelers who actually helped fund a driving facility to teach the women in Namibia how to drive so that they could go get jobs in the mine. And so we really feel strongly that if we are taking something from somewhere, we need to be giving back as well. And we take that very seriously. And we take our sourcing very seriously as well, in terms of we need to ensure that we are doing everything we possibly can to make sure what we're selling is responsibly sourced. And that goes way beyond the diamonds. That goes to the metal, it goes to the gold, it goes to the labor, it goes to so many different factors outside of just the diamonds, but it's something that is just absolutely important to us.
I just read something, or I saw something, I can't even remember what, it was talking about where they get whatever's in batteries. I don't know if it's lithium or whatever in the mines, and it just sounded like horrible conditions. So hopefully people can hear about that, and kids are really young in the labor pool, and it just sounds terrible.
It's
the mining conditions.
Yeah, the mining conditions are thankfully in the diamond industry. Thankfully, they're better because they were so bad, and so there are now these non-governmental organizations that are constantly watching them, which is great. But the conditions can be, if you don't have that, the conditions are terrible, and that's why miners wouldn't live very long. There's a lot of areas where, like you said, where different mines where it's not that much regulated, and so there's just not great conditions down there. And ultimately, people are people. We need to take care of people, and people should deserve to be treated the same. And so I think that's why we feel grateful that we're glad that we're so old, because we've been able to work with companies that are also so old and take that commitment seriously like we do.
Let's go back to Hans Jewelers and fifth generation.
Fifth generation.
That's a lot of That's a lot of years, huh? And I know you put your money where your mouth is on giving back to the community. Yeah. Talk to me about your role and your thoughts on Johnson County Foundation.
So absolutely. Well, I was involved in the sense of I gave some time, but you yourself and Watts Group has been arguably one of the biggest supporters of the Community Foundation of Johnson County for a long time, and I would just want to say thank you for that first and foremost. And
we're glad to do it.
Yeah,
by the way.
it's a great organization, and so I was the president of the board of the Community Foundation of Johnson County, and in all honesty, that was one of what I would say, I don't want to call it my achievement, but it was one of my most proud moments, especially too because I was actually a third generation member on the Community Foundation. So my grandfather helped found it, and then my mother was involved with it. My mother, who is the most amazing person I've ever known in my life, and so I love that organization. I started getting involved in nonprofits when I was high school. I started serving on the Iowa Children's Museum board when I was a junior in high school, and my grandfather, after he became president of Field Museum, came back. He put all his time toward nonprofits, and that really stuck with me. And so, being a part of the Community Foundation of Johnson County was just the most amazing experience. When I kind of came in, Shelley Meharry, who is the current executive director and a guest on your show, she was just coming in, and she has done just things. I mean, I can't speak highly enough to what she's done and her team has done to really up the Community Foundation, because people know the Community Foundation now, and it just used to be, oh, who's the Community Foundation? What is it? Where are they? And it's an organization basically that is there to help everyone in Johnson County. It's not just there to help people in Iowa City. It's not just there to help people in Coralville. It's there to help everyone in Johnson County and help the other nonprofits as well. And so it's just this amazing institution that is there to really kind of oversee and help the global good of our community. And, so being president of that was such an amazing experience. I mean, I have to say, in everything I've done, from my job to community involvement, I've been fortunate that I've had just these amazing, amazing women around me who are just phenomenal leaders, and I feel like I've honestly rode their coattails. I mean, Shelley's a great example of that. My aunt's a great example of that, and but yeah, being a part of that was so important to me, and it just was really, really satisfying. And it's sad to me that my term's finally coming to an end, but it's been an amazing run.
Well, there's such a need in Johnson County, and saying that, and there's so many wonderful organizations to give to, and then wouldn't you consider Johnson County generous? With the folks that give
absolutely.
money.
Absolutely.
It's amazing, isn't it?
We are so lucky. We're so lucky that we have people who care.
Right.
We all are very different in Johnson County, and we have different views on many different things. But one thing we can all come together on is giving. And Gary, I'll be honest with you, you're a great example of that. I mean, you and your company have been a great example of giving generously. And not to flip the script on you, but do you mind just telling me what got you involved in giving? I just would love to, because I look at you and I'm just like, I'm trying to get to that.
Well, the community has been so wonderful to us, to Becky and I and the company. We started in '78, and it's just been so amazing. It's just time to give back. Should have been doing it earlier. Yeah. But we're excited to give back, because this is where we generate our wealth and income. Yeah. Was from this area, so why not give back? And there's just so many wonderful causes. One way I look at it is, when you're giving or when you're gracious, are you upset? No. It's a good feeling. It makes you feel better, and you're helping people that need it. And the community's been so good to us. We just felt it's time to give back. Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that I had more of that thought when I was a lot younger. But so if I could tell you anything when you're younger, like what you're doing, volunteer for boards, be generous, because when you're in that mode, it's the best mode you can be into, to be gracious and have gratitude and be thankful for what you have. And your abilities. That's how I look at it.
And I think you're absolutely right.
Thanks for changing the script, by the way.
Yeah, you got it anytime. No, I mean, but I honestly, I promise I'm not sucking up to you, but I do have to say, I mean, I look up to people like yourself who generously give back to the community and do it for the sake of giving back to the community. You don't do it because you want a Watts logo somewhere. You could care less. You're doing it because you care about the people in the community, and you care about that, what you're actually giving to. And I think that's so neat, and something that I will take away. One thing I'll say to anybody young or old who's trying to get involved, for a very, very long time, I did not have any money to give, and so I was told at an early age, if you don't have money to give, you give time.
Give your time,
and that's what I've done, and it's been so unbelievably satisfying for me, and it's just the feeling of knowing that you're making your community a better place is second to none.
Another thing is, I love Iowans. I talk about it on the show. Yeah. We've traveled all over, but I like coming home, and I like people in Iowa. Yeah. There was just a thing I saw on KCRG the other day. Was a gentleman, he's 97, Still rides his bike.
Wow.
He's going on Ragbri. He's riding with his grandson. I don't know how his probably 40. I don't, his age.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there looking at this guy. He's 97. But guess what he does every morning? He delivers Meals on Wheels.
Oh, God.
And I'm just sitting
That's
there
so
going,
nice.
he's riding his bike. He's still giving back, and he's 97. That's the kind of guys
That's
that
beautiful.
you want to be attracted to.
100%.
And he's a Hawk. He's an Iowan.
Yeah.
And when you think of an Iowan, if you had a flat tire, they're going to stop and help you fix it.
Isn't it great?
You can just see it. You don't even have to ask.
Yeah.
Look at the derecho in Cedar Rapids.
Absolutely.
70-80% of the tree canopy was destroyed. What'd they do? You got just a snip on national news, just a little. They didn't whine about it. They didn't talk about it. They just went out and got a chainsaw and an axe and started cutting and cleaning it up. Everybody helped each other. Everybody just went out in the street. I went up there like 3 days later. I thought it was a war zone. I couldn't believe it. But everybody was out. There was air conditioning was out. I mean, holes in roofs. I mean, it was awful. We all know. But you didn't get a lot of national press because Iowans, we take care of ourselves and we just got after it.
Yeah, and we just do it. We
didn't
don't
talk about it.
Yep.
We didn't have a bunch of people whining in the streets. Just people just went hardcore at it, and that's Iowa.
Yeah, that's
and it's like our floods here.
Yeah,
in Coralville and Iowa City, we've had horrible floods, 93, 4, 8, so whatever. I can't remember the dates. I remember sandbagging, but everybody, where can we help?
Yeah.
What can we do? Didn't talk about it, and that's Iowa.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So let's get back to the store.
All right.
So not just diamonds, you got watches. Tell us a little more briefly of the array of all the items that you sell in the store.
Sure, absolutely. So, so I'll kind of walk you down this the case. When you walk into Hands, the first thing you're going to see is our engagement ring case and our wedding band case, and that's obviously being in a college town. That's a big part of our business. But we also have been my grandfather actually really started this. Is that we love very fine colored stones, and we like very unique things, and so we have a great selection of colored stones, of very unique colored stones, of stuff that there's stones in there that my grandfather bought 40 years ago that we still have that we've put in pieces or haven't mounted yet. And so we like to, my grandpa always wanted to have a store where, we had things that normally you just had to go to a big city for, but you could come into here and you could find those, amazing things. And so we have a great selection of colored stones and then have a great selection of, diamond fashion jewelry and colored stone fashion jewelry, as well as, some beautiful sterling silver pieces. So we really try and have something for everyone. We want everyone to be able to come in there and feel like there's something for them and that, it's not that we don't want someone coming in thinking, oh, everything's $10,000 or we really try and have something for everyone. And we actually, the way we display our store is much different than a lot of stores in the sense that we don't display all the big pieces in one area. We don't just group those together. No, we put things amongst each other because we want everything to be amongst each other so people can ask questions and try things on. Because what if you see a piece that you absolutely love and, it's way out of your price range, but you love that design? Well, if you knew it was a 50,000 plus prior to it, you wouldn't even ask to see it. Right? If you don't know, you're gonna ask to see it, and then you'll try it on and say, "Oh, I actually like this design. I mean, I don't want it to be this price, but but I have this stone. I'd love to make it like this." So it gives people the opportunity to come into our store, and they can kind of choose their own adventure and kind of really explore the store themselves, and in the sense of seeing these different pieces. We also don't. I don't think there's too much of this anymore, but it used to be in jewelry stores. You just had the price tag out, and so it was kind of like stay away if you can't.
That would have helped me.
I feel like maybe that might have, right. And we have great that. And then we probably the biggest secret that we have is that we have an amazing giftware and barware department and up in the second floor of our store that my wife does a great job with. And so do a lot of gifts for different organizations in the community, and it's a great area as well. I'm not allowed up there because I break everything, everything.
So tell us just real briefly, then I want to get into the Appalachian Trail delivery to Patty. That's a great story.
It is a good story.
Tell us, you do have specialty items, and like you said, your grandfather cut stuff. And did you go to Germany, or tell it? Maybe some people aren't aware of some really cool things you've done for folks.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of tell a story that one of my favorite stories, and it's about a particular stone. It was a green tourmaline, and so my just to give a little backstory, my grandfather and my father, they are amazing gemologists, and I have a certain type of taste, but they just get it. They were really amazing, and so they would travel, all over. But they then found a place in Germany called Eder Oberstein, and it was this community of cutters. And for 500 plus years, it was just this little village where they cut the most amazing gemstones in the world. And a lot of what they cut too was what we call semi-precious gemstones. And so that's things that, ruby, emerald, sapphire, diamond, and black opal was considered precious, and everything else was just kind of, looked past. It was there, but it wasn't really there. Well, my grandfather and my father really loved that, and they thought, these are gorgeous stones. And if they're paired up with gorgeous cutters, then it really, can make something special. And so, long story short, they went over there, had an amazing time, and so they came back with a bunch of stones. But they said to the cutters, who we were still good friends with, they said, we'd love to have you guys come over to Hands. We'd love to fly over to Hands, and bring your son over, and we'd love to introduce you to our community, and we, bring some of your stones so that we can show them. And so, with this particular stone, they happened to bring their master cutter with them, which was just like unbelievable. I mean, it would be the best comparison I can really think of is it'd be like bringing Michael Jordan with you. There's somebody.
Or Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Caitlin Clark, exactly. And so this gentleman, came over, and he was quite an eccentric fellow, and so my dad started talking to him, and my dad is as I'll say, the best salesperson in the world. The guy can ask questions for 3 days straight, and so he gets talking to him and says, what's the hardest thing to cut? Well, it's tourmaline, because it shatters really easily, and it's almost impossible to cut when it's round, and different things like that. And so I think there might have been maybe a little bit of drinking involved, and a couple beers in, my dad made him a bet that he couldn't cut a round tourmaline with what we call step cuts on the bottom. And what that is that's square facets on the bottom of the stone. So it's basically if you merged a square cut stone and a round cut stone, and you merge those two, and it's something that would be, if you ask somebody to do it today, no one would do it. Not a single person would do it, because the stone would 100% shatter. And so he went back to Germany, and about I think it was 8 or 9 months later, the stone shows up just perfect, with a very hefty bill enclosed, and he had cut it. So it was just this really amazing stone. And so this is a stone that we had for over 40 years, and we didn't actually put it into anything until probably, I don't even, less than 10 years ago. And so it was just such a neat piece. It was something where our colored stone dealers would come in, and they'd try and buy it off of us. That's how great of a stone it was. And so it was just really neat to think that they went to Germany to really create this relationship with this company, but also just, I kind of love the aspect of making a bet and having something like that great pulled off.
And you can't do it today. What a nice piece.
Oh yeah.
So when it comes to what the store offers, whatever it is in jewelry, you've got everything: earrings, necklaces, watches, and obviously rings.
Yeah, we try and do as much as we can, and help any way, any way we can.
Tell us, we got to do a few things here before we wrap up. Tell us some customer service stories.
Oh gosh,
you got the Appalachian story. You got the blizzard in Des Moines. Anyway, just if you can think.
I'll run through them real quick.
Well, do some things, because people need to hear this.
These
this
are
is
some
good
of
stuff.
my favorites. So, probably my favorite one, and I felt like this was when I first understood what Hands was true. I feel like really, really understood what Hands was about. So we've always believed that, our philosophy was, excellence through customer service, that we need to give everything to our customers. And so basically what happened was we dropped the ball on a repair. It was a $25 repair, and it was somebody who lived in Des Moines, and they were coming through to get it. And we dropped the ball, and we had completed what we thought needed to be done, but we didn't look at it completely, and had missed something. And it wasn't egregious, but the person came in, and they needed to go, and so they came in, drove in from Des Moines. They were doing business, and it wasn't ready for them, and they were very nice about it, but obviously frustrated. And I said to them, you know what, I'm going to have the jeweler do it today. I'm going to drive it to you. And they said, oh, no. And so I think I said, I'll have them do it today, and then I'll drive it to you tomorrow. And so had our jeweler take care of it. Dan, our jeweler's amazing guy, and well, it just so happened there was a blizzard, one of the biggest blizzards we had in the last 10 years. So I ended up driving this $25 repair, which of course we didn't charge them for, to Des Moines, and in this blizzard, and it was the scariest experience of my life. It took me 7 hours round trip, and my stop at her house was maybe 3 minutes.
How were your knuckles? White?
Oh, so white. And it was just, I don't ever think I've prayed so much in my life making it back. And it was really, really, terrifying, but it also kind of reinforced what I think my father's always taught us, and my aunt has really taught me this as well, of that it doesn't matter what the number is.
Right.
It matters that you take care of that customer.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you spend a penny or $100,000. You're going to be treated the same.
And we all make mistakes. You realized it, admitted it, and you took care of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the way to Des Moines, were you behind a snowplow and couldn't see 10 feet?
Oh, what I actually did, I couldn't find a snowplow for the life of me. I decided that I need to be in front of everybody, because if I was in front, then I felt like I was safe. And so
no tracks. Probably.
Yeah. And my Camry was just chugging along, but it was just a great, lesson of just in terms of, A, it shouldn't have happened in the first place, but B, you got to make it right. You don't hide behind something and, pretend that something's not what it is. You got to say, hey, I messed up. This is what it is, and we're going to make it right for you.
Tell us about the Appalachian Trail.
This is really great. So the Appalachian Trail is a really amazing story. So had two customers who spent 5-6 months actually climbing the Appalachian Trail, the full extent of it.
Isn't it like 1,000 miles?
Yeah,
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it's insane.
From Vermont all the way.
Yep.
Down in West Virginia.
And so I had talked to him prior to it, and he wanted to propose on the trail, and cool, yeah, no problem, we can do that. Didn't really think about it that much. I was pretty young, still doing this, and so then he calls me on the trail, and he says, "You still have that stone that I looked at?" And I said, "Yeah, I still have it." And he said, "I need a ring." I said, "Okay, cool, we can do that." And he's like, "I need it in a week," and I'm like, oh, because generally things take 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, yeah, we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen for you. And so our jeweler, Dan, put together this amazing ring in no time. And then it came to, how are we going to get this to them? They're on the Appalachian Trail. Yeah. And so
drone now, you can do a drone.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening was I got probably 50, 60 phone calls, and I found a guide who I could FedEx the package to the guide, really? And then I could get him to climb. And it had to be a surprise to her. And she was with him 24/7. And so the guide had to go, and he actually dug up behind it. This is a 100% true story. Dug up behind a tree, marked the tree, and actually put the ring box underneath it. And so, the whole time I'm thinking, oh, it's going to get stolen, or something's going to happen, and it ended up working out perfectly, and it was just such an amazing experience, and it was just really neat to be a part of that. But boy, that's crazy. That was really something else.
That's customer service, right?
Yeah.
How long was the ring by the tree?
So it was by there for, I think it was close to 13 hours that it was actually by there, which was just nerve-wracking for me. And
reminds me of the story of Shawshank Redemption. At the end, he had to dig that up, and he found where he was having money on that fence by an oak tree or whatever it was.
And so, that was a really amazing experience. But that happens, in our business. And I think the most recent, just to share one more quick story, because I love this story because I think it's just kind of hilarious and somewhat me, in the sense of, I will do anything to make I want to do anything we can to make our customer happy. And so we had a wedding band. Basically, we had a customer who was getting married in a very remote area of Washington, the state of Washington. And so their wedding band, it was COVID times, and so it got caught up and just was behind. And so I just couldn't, I sent them with other wedding bands, but I just really wanted them to be able to get married in their actual wedding bands, And so I didn't tell them this, but I actually found a way to get the ring to hands. And then I thought, okay, perfect. I'll just FedEx it to them. Well, I'm not always the smartest. And it turns out, FedEx is a 3-day delivery time there, and I need it there tomorrow. And so I once again hopped on the horn, and I called so many different people, ended up getting a hold of somebody I knew from high school, hadn't talked to since high school. And I said, hey, I know you're in Portland, and I know this is about 4 hours away from you. I need to FedEx you this ring, and I will pay you to go drive it out to him. So I FedExed the ring to him. The FedEx driver took it to the wrong address. He then got it and then drove 4 hours. And right as they were finishing taking pictures prior to the wedding, they got the ring, and it was just one of the most amazing, experiences. Yeah. But boy, it felt like I hadn't slept in a week after that. But it was really neat. It's a fun story to tell.
Well, Charlie, this has been great. You're a gem. If people don't know who Charlie Nusser is, now you know.
I appreciate it.
And Hens Jewelers does a fabulous job. You do get to know the customers, and you guys do a great job. So This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We've covered a lot of topics.
Yeah.
So
this is great.
Good job. So thanks again for coming in.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And Gary, thank you to you. I think our community all needs wants to say thank you to you for all you do and things like your podcast and all you give back. And you're just such a great person. And thank you for being a role model for someone who I'm not as young as I used to be, but younger than me. I honestly, sincerely thank you for that.
Thank you. Have a good one.